There is a voice in your head, and it is not yours. You have assumed it was. You have followed it for years without questioning its authority. But consider something you may have never allowed yourself to fully examine. The voice does not speak randomly. It has timing, precise, deliberate, and uncomfortably accurate timing. And if you study that timing carefully enough, something begins to feel very wrong about what you thought you understood. The voice knows when you are about to move, not in the direction of danger, not toward the things that would genuinely harm you. It speaks loudest at the exact moment you are about to move towards something better, something unfamiliar, something that would require you to become a version of yourself that does not yet exist. That is when it arrives. Not gently, not with caution or care or the measured tone of something that has your best interests in mind. With urgency, with precision, with a specific and intimate knowledge of exactly what argument will be most effective on you. In this moment, given your particular history and your particular fears and the particular way you have learned to justify staying where you are. Random noise does not have that kind of knowledge. Random noise does not organize itself around your moments of potential transformation. But this does. And that difference is the thing worth sitting with. Think about the last time you were standing at the edge of something real. Not a fantasy about change. An actual threshold. The moment before you were going to say the thing you had been holding back for months. The voice appeared. The moment before you were going to make the decision that would have moved your life in a genuinely different direction. The voice appeared. The moment before you were going to walk away from something that had stopped serving you long ago and that you had already, in your clearest moments, understood needed to end. The voice appeared. Always with reasons, always with logic that felt just sound enough to be persuasive. Always with the particular combination of your own memories and your own language and your own fears, assembled into an argument that felt like it was coming from the most honest part of you. Because it sounded like you. It used your vocabulary. It referenced your specific history. It knew which failures to surface and which doubts carried the most weight and which version of the future would be most effective at producing the hesitation it needed to produce. It did not need to overwhelm you. It only needed to delay you. And delay is enough. Because if you hesitate long enough, the moment passes, the door closes, and you remain exactly where you were, unchanged. Which is precisely what the voice was working toward. This is the question that most people never ask, because asking it requires accepting an answer that is deeply uncomfortable. Is the voice protecting you? Or is the voice protecting something else? Because if you examine what the voice actually defends, across every situation, across every threshold, across every moment of potential change, the pattern is consistent. It defends the familiar, the known, the current version of you. Even when the current version of you is the very thing you have been trying to move beyond. Even when you know, with the clearest part of your awareness, that staying where you are is not safety. It is stagnation wearing the costume of wisdom. The voice does not make this distinction. It calls stagnation protection. It calls repetition stability. It calls delay prudence. And because the words sound reasonable, and because the words sound like you accept the argument. Not because you are weak. Because the argument is constructed from your own material. It is built from everything you have ever believed, every fear you have ever carried, every failure you have ever tried to protect yourself from repeating. The voice does not fight you with foreign weapons. It fights you with your own. There is an ancient observation that surfaces across traditions so geographically and historically separate that the agreement between them suggests they were not inventing an idea, but pointing at something they had each independently discovered. The observation is this: the closer a person moves toward genuine transformation, the louder the interior resistance becomes. Not quieter, louder. The teachers who recorded this were not describing occasional doubt or the ordinary hesitation of someone making a difficult decision. They were describing something that behaved with intention. Something that recognized the approach of real change and organized itself in direct response to that recognition. Some traditions described it in the language of spiritual opposition. Others described it in the language of psychological self-preservation. The specific vocabulary varied. But the phenomenon they were describing was consistent across every account. Something inside the human being resists transformation. Not transformation toward harm, transformation toward freedom. And it resists it with increasing force as the person approaches the threshold, as though the proximity to change activates the resistance in proportion to how real the change has become. Consider what this means for your own life. Every time the resistance was loudest, you were closest to the threshold. The moments that felt most impossible were the moments that required the least additional distance. The hesitation that felt most justified was the hesitation that was most strategically necessary to keep you in place. The voice was not telling you the truth about what was possible. The voice was telling you what was necessary to prevent you from finding out. And the unbearable thing about this, the thing that most people cannot sit with once they have seen it clearly, is the retrospective understanding of all the thresholds they did not cross. Not because they were incapable, not because the timing was genuinely wrong, but because the voice arrived with sufficient precision at sufficient volume to produce sufficient hesitation that the moment dissolved before the action could follow, not by force, by suggestion. By whispering "not now, not yet, not you," in a voice that sounded enough like your own that you never once demanded its credentials. Now notice something. The voice is present right now. It is responding to these words in real time. It is evaluating, forming positions, deciding whether this is true or useful or something to be dismissed before it requires too much honest examination. It is doing exactly what it always does, arriving between you and the thing that would require something from you. But there is something else present, something that was there before the voice began its current response, something that is not producing the evaluation, not composing the resistance, not calculating the most effective way to return you to where you were before these words arrived, something that is simply watching all of that happen. Observing the voice with the patient and unhurried quality of something that has never been confused about which one of them is speaking and which one is being spoken to. That observer has been present through every threshold the voice ever spoke you away from. It was there at every door the voice convinced you to step back from. It watched. It did not argue with the voice. It did not try to shout over it. It simply remained, unchanged by the argument, unchanged by the fear, unchanged by the hesitation and the delay and the closed doors. The voice reacted. The awareness remained. And the distinction between those two things is the most important distinction a person can arrive at. Not because the distinction resolves the resistance, but because seeing the resistance clearly changes your relationship to it. The voice loses a specific and crucial power the moment you stop mistaking it for yourself. Timing reveals intention. And the intention of the voice is not your flourishing. It is your continuity. It is the preservation of the current version of you, regardless of whether the current version of you is serving your actual life. It does not weigh your flourishing against your familiarity and recommend the flourishing. It defends the familiar because the familiar is what it is made of. It is constructed from your history, and it cannot see beyond your history. It can only see what has already been, which means it cannot see what is possible. And it will speak with complete authority about possibilities it cannot see. It will tell you the door is too heavy to open. It will tell you the threshold is the wrong one. It will tell you the timing is wrong, the conditions are wrong. The version of you standing here is not yet sufficient for what is waiting on the other side. And every word of that will be delivered in your voice, with your vocabulary, with your specific fears arranged in their most persuasive order. This is not a coincidence. This is the mechanism. So the question is not whether the voice will speak. It will speak. The question is not whether the resistance will arrive. It will arrive. The question is whether you will be able, in the moment the voice is loudest, to recognize the loudness itself as information, not as a warning, as a signal that you are closer to something real than the voice wants you to be. That the resistance you feel is proportional to the significance of what you are approaching. That the most convincing argument for staying is arriving at exactly the moment it needs to arrive to be most effective. And that on the other side of that argument, something is waiting. Something the voice cannot describe, because the voice has never been there. Something that has no equivalent in your history, because your history does not contain it yet. What it is not something that can be explained from here. It can only be found by crossing the threshold the voice is currently working, with everything it has, to keep you from crossing. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. The voice will continue, but it will never again feel like you.